During the year 300 BC, a prosperous merchant named Zeno resided in the city of Cyprus. All of his belongings perished in the sinking of his boat while he was traveling from Phoenicia to Piraeus. This extremely affluent man went from being wealthy to being poor in the blink of an eye due to a single, completely uncontrollable event. Assume the role of Zeno. How would you respond if the forces of nature completely wiped out everything you had worked for in your life? What is the appropriate response? Would you feel enraged, depressing? Do you think you've been let down by life? These would all be considered typical responses for most people, but not for Zeno, the father of Stoicism. A tiny shift in perspective can eventually lead to bigger, more significant changes, since little adjustments endure a lifetime. The essence of Stoicism is in the notion of acceptance and apathy. Following his readings of Socrates and other great philosophers' writings, Zeno developed and imparted Stoicism. Though we have little influence over what occurs to us, Zeno contends that we do have control over how it affects us, and we must make the most of this power. Instead of sobbing over dropped milk, or in this case, drowned goods, Zeno concentrated on keeping his cool under pressure and acting impartially and calmly in spite of his circumstances. Nowadays, Stoics are unintentionally perceived as unbreakable, as those who don't frequently stray to the extremes of emotion or experience episodes of anxiety or fury. However, Stoicism's basic concept went well beyond that. Stoicism was a technique of seeing, describing, and comprehending the world, not just a way to characterize emotionally detached individuals. It was a way of life, and for centuries, it has been that way. The benefits of Stoic philosophy are still relevant now, just as they were thousands of years ago. It can be implemented in the same way. Through Stoicism, we can transform the unpleasant feelings we get from bad situations into ideas that help us see the world from a different angle. Everyone in the world has a unique set of experiences, which leads to a diversity of opinions on many topics. Perspective is everything. The Stoics' general philosophy was well known since they convened, conversed, and imparted philosophy in a public setting. They held that the understanding of Stoic principles might be of great advantage to everyone, and that it would be imprudent to keep it hidden within the walls of a school or the courtyards of a palace. Because of this, everyone had the opportunity to learn and adopt the Stoic lifestyle, from slaves to emperors. The most famous Stoics in history include Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and one of the most powerful men in history, Seneca, the famed statesman, and Epictetus, whose name means acquired since he was formerly a slave. The early Stoics led the struggle against inequality and abstained from all types of segregation, living as they taught. They even coined the term cosmopolitan, which translates to global citizen. This kind of unity and oneness was what the Stoics advocated, and when people hear that phrase today, they think of different cities like New York, Toronto, Dubai, and London. Women were not permitted to pursue philosophy during the time that Stoicism was founded, but Stoics disagreed with that entirely. The mentor of Epictetus, Musonius Rufus, famously remarked that women are just as enthusiastic and naturally inclined toward virtue as males are. Noble and just deeds make women happy, just as much as they do men, and they disapprove of the contrary. If that's the case, then why is it acceptable for males to study philosophy and look for ways to live well, but not for women? Women were permitted to study Stoicism and practice it themselves, even during a period when it was unpopular. Why then do so many individuals choose to live stoically? Our emotions often get in the way of things in a world full of unexpected turns of events. In actuality, we become depressed when unanticipated negative events occur to us rather than because unpleasant things happen to us. It's fantastic to have rain. It maintains the climate cool and humid, helps irrigate our plants, and supplies water for cattle. However, it's never a pleasant experience when that dark cloud catches you outside without an umbrella. So when it starts to rain, why don't we start crying? It's because, despite the unfavorable circumstance, we've come to expect rain. We have no control over the weather, so even though it's unpleasant, the rain eventually stops and the light comes back. Similar to this, Stoicism instructs us to anticipate that the worst possible thing will occur. Imagine the worst-case scenario and accept that it is a possibility. Voluntary discomfort. is an exercise from the Stoics that aims to heighten feelings of thankfulness. For a few days, you could sleep on the kitchen floor, take cold showers instead of hot ones, and eat nothing but potatoes. This exercise teaches you that if you have the correct mindset, you can survive and even thrive in the face of adversity. We indirectly get our minds ready for further bad luck when we can tolerate these unpleasant circumstances. This message is more vital than ever because of the situation of the world today, where commercials are always shoving themselves down our throats and making us believe that we will never be happy if we don't have the newest, greatest thing, look a certain way, or make a certain amount of money. We come into the world with very little knowledge. Things are taught to us as children at home, in school, and via personal observation of the outside world. The problem is that each of these three knowledge sources frequently imparts knowledge to us in a different way. Is it necessary for us to absorb all of this information? If we do, we might be unintentionally creating artificial expectations for our lives, which would ultimately leave us dissatisfied and disillusioned. It is not a way to life. Rather, we ought to concentrate on bettering ourselves for our own sake. The only reason we should take action is for ourselves. Disappointment is nearly usually the result of tying our behavior to any external hopes or secondary attachments. We frequently find ourselves attempting to occupy the void with outside objects, spending all of your money on a home, a nice automobile, or even a family. There are moments when we act only on the basis of their perceived value rather than their inherent worth. However, Stoicism teaches that if you approach life in this way, you put your happiness in the hands of unreliable outside forces. Every year, towns are destroyed by natural calamities, cars almost always break down, and the number of divorces rises. However, everything in life has a price, including free stuff. The price of room, both mental and physical. Learning to live with less will create space in your life for the things that truly matter to you, as Seneca once wrote. Rather, we must base our happiness on nothing material that we own or can physically obtain, but rather on our inherent worth as human beings. Regardless matter what life throws at us, we must make the decision to try our hardest to maintain composure. Because in the end, we have no control over most of the things that happen to us, no matter what we wish, but we do have complete power over how we respond to those situations. The most crucial idea in Stoic philosophy is the duality of control. To identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control, is how Epictetus put it. This is the fundamental duty in life. Stoic philosophy teaches us to distinguish between the things we can control and the things we cannot. Our worth should be determined by the things we can control, rather than by the ones we cannot. While working toward your goals is admirable, Stoics believe that it is pointless to lose your cool when things don't work out as planned. Although it's much easier than becoming a Roman emperor, creating YouTube videos may still be difficult at times. It takes a long time to come up with a concept, research it, decide it's a bad idea, start over, script the video, make the video, edit it, create the thumbnail and title, and finish all the other steps before you upload. You are in charge of everything up until the moment you click upload. But after you hit the upload button, the YouTube algorithm takes over. Nevertheless, a lot of people use metrics that are generally beyond of their control to determine the success of their YouTube channel or Instagram account, the number of views, subscribers, or followers. Instead of focusing on the results of your outward hopes, Stoics advise that you should measure the success of your work by the amount of effort you put in. Have faith in the procedure. Living frugally entails releasing yourself from the social restraints you've essentially forced upon yourself. Consider someone who has dedicated themselves to their work for the last 6 months. He approaches his employer with his performance report since he believes he deserves a promotion at this point. The employer praises him, declines to give him the promotion, and he leaves, believing he must be a bad employee. He fails to take into account the possibility that the employer might have merely gotten upset, that someone else might have been more competent at the time, or that the business was just losing money and couldn't afford it. Even if he doesn't know why, He is still angry. He could have been much pleased all around if he had just focused on the caliber of the performance report he submitted and continued working for the promotion he desired. If viewed from a different angle, his objective would have been delayed rather than weakened. It's important to reframe your perspective. A true Stoic finds solace in the knowledge that they may lead a comfortable life without acquiring everything that money can purchase, rather than measuring their success in terms of money made from their endeavors. The four primary tenets of Stoicism are justice, temperance, courage, and wisdom. The ability to discern between what is internal and external, as well as the capacity to select how we respond to events as they arise, are qualities of wisdom. There is a gap between stimulus and response, as noted by Viktor Frankl. We have the ability to select how we will react in that place. The definition of courage is persist and resist. I just shown temperance or moderation by stating more with fewer words and doing more with less. While Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are battling it out at the top of Forbes' list, Stoics contend that the only criteria for determining one's level of wealth should be having what is necessary and then having enough. Among all the virtues, justice is the most crucial. It commands that no one should injure another, because at our core, we were all created to be good to one another, not to ourselves. Among the most well-known African leaders in the world was Nelson Mandela. He was sentenced to life in jail for his anti-apartheid activities, and he spent 27 years in prison before being allowed to leave. Many people believed that because he had been elected president of South Africa after his release from prison, he would ruthlessly punish everyone connected to apartheid or his detention. Of course, this was not the case. Mandela read Marcus Aurelius' writings while incarcerated and picked up many of the tenets of Stoicism, which he carried with him throughout his life. Nelson Mandela advised his followers to look for the opposite, rather than demanding the heads of the wrongdoers, to unwind and repair. He emphasized that they could no longer change the past. Instead, they had to figure out how to move forward and create a better country. This is how the Stoics do it. The foundation of contemporary medical practices such as rational emotive behavioral therapy and logotherapy is Stoicism. Patients can detect negative thought patterns that may be contributing to emotional and behavioral problems with the aid of REBT. It enables you to use logic to refute the reasoning behind all of these unfavorable ideas, and after you see how many of them are baseless, you may swap them out with more constructive and healthful viewpoints. Conversely, logotherapy is grounded in the Stoic idea that people are motivated by a sense of purpose. By merely identifying that purpose, we may bring meaning and enjoyment into our lives even in the most dire circumstances. However, as a lot of us are aware, this is easier said than done. Like everything else, it's a process. Our mental processes need to be rewired. The old is gone and the new is in. We need to work on our self-worth in order to solve our happiness issues. We can quit becoming obsessed with the things we cannot control and, in general, have a lot happier and more fulfilled life by shifting our definition of worth to the things that we can control. We can navigate through current and historical storms and find calmer, more serene waters by practicing Stoicism. And even though we didn't live as long as we had anticipated, we can be content that we had a decent life in the event that our ship sinks and we are all drowned. Since everything has an end, keep that in mind.